Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
My name's Colleen, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. And I'm really, really nervous. I'd like to thank Larry and Christina for asking me to speak, which was way a couple months ago. And, you know, when I first started coming to the meeting, I was thinking today, I'm from the East Coast, and I'm new here, and I talk really fast, and I forget to breathe. So I do that anyway, so it just gets worse when I'm nervous. But you know, again, I like to thank them. It's always an honor and a privilege to give back to Alcoholics Anonymous what has been so freely given to me. And I have to remember that on a daily basis, because if I got what I deserved, Eric said it, I would not be standing here. I know that for a fact. Where I'd be, I don't know, because I don't have a crystal ball, but it would not be here. And, you know, my sobriety date is September 17th, 1995. I have a home group. It's the Great Fact group. It meets on Thursday nights. I have a second home group. It's a Monday night women's meeting, too, in El Cajon. But, you know, I have a sponsor, and I try and practice the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous to the best of my ability in my life on a daily basis, and I fall way short a lot of days. And the fact that I don't pick up a drink on a daily basis sometimes is all I could do. And again, you know, that's just for me. We just moved here in July. I've spoken a lot back home. Speaker meetings are very prevalent back home. You sit down. You don't have to get dressed up. You know, you speak for about 20 minutes, and, you know, it's just different. So again, bear with me. 50-minute speakers back home are usually at conferences or something like that. You know, I'll tell you a little bit what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. I am the oldest of 4 children. Grew up in an alcoholic home. My father was a heroin addict. You know, he would go out for a gallon of milk and not come home for 3 months. I watched him beat my mom up on a regular basis. You know, we were put around things and people that we should have never been put around. My mom is also a recovering alcoholic. And being the oldest of 4 kids, I hated everything about alcohol. I hated it. I saw the destruction, the chaos, and the torment that it causes in families. You know, and you know, my mom would be on the load, and I'd have to call my grandparents to get us milk and bread. You know what I mean? So I can make lunch for us to go to school. I felt like I was thrown into my daughter. Excuse me. That's a gift of AA. Sorry. Whew. Wow. I just listened to a good friend of mine back home. She spoke at a conference back home, and she said when she got sober, they would only give her half a cup of coffee because she shook so bad. She used to spill it all over herself. But, wow. So again, I hated everything alcohol represented. I saw it, you know what I mean? My uncles would have knife fights. It was nasty on both sides of the family. And my mom got sober for 3 years, and then she picked a drink up, and I was 11. And I could not continue to be the parent, you know what I mean, in this household. I just couldn't do it anymore, and I told her so. And I went off to live with her parents, my maternal grandparents. They graciously took me into their home. They were sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous. My grandfather is 90 years old, and he has 47 years of sobriety. And he was my example. He was my, you know what I mean, like the people that have walked before me. But anyway, I went to live with them. They, you know, graciously took me into their home, and I went from, like, being on welfare, having hand-me-down clothes, feeling less than, going to school, you know what I mean, just before I even picked alcohol up, just feeling worthless and just, you know what I mean, like a piece of shit, excuse me. And, you know, to this home that was normal, we sat down to dinner every night. I got involved in lacrosse and field hockey in school. I felt like I got my white picket fence, and it was actually a cyclone fence, but it was my picket fence, and that's what it felt like. And at the age of 13, me and 3 other girls got 2 quarts. 2 of us were going to split them. I drank 1.5 of those quarts. I peed my pants, I threw up, and I blacked out, and I drank that way every time I put alcohol into my system after that, until I physically could not drink anymore for whatever reason it was, be it that I passed out, there wasn't any more, whatever the case may be. I drank until I physically could not pick up booze anymore. And again, that was at the age of 13. My life, all I cared about was drinking. I wanted to know who had booze at the bus stop, if we cut school, where the keg was going to be, you know what I mean? That's where I was going to be. Nothing else mattered except getting another drink. And that first drink was euphoric for me. And it was for me, and that's my story. I felt bigger than you, better than you, smarter than you. I felt like I had nice clothes on. I could speak to the boys. I was everything that I wasn't, or that I felt like I wasn't before I picked that first drink up. And I drank to get that feeling until the last drink that I took, and I was never, ever able to attain that. But I've got a lot of those feelings in the right context and in the right place in Alcoholics Anonymous by not picking up a drink one day at a time. I ended up my first rehab when I was 15. I was incorrigible. I used to say I was a chronic runaway, but I really didn't run away. If I was out drinking and there was still booze left, I wasn't leaving. My grandparents were in AA, and they were very strict, so they were like, you have to be in at 10 o'clock, and if you're 1 minute late, you're grounded. So if there was booze left at, 9:59, I wasn't going home, and I figured if I was going to get grounded, I may as well get grounded for something really good. You know what I mean? And I would stay out for 3 and 4 days on end, and back home they had the L, and I would get on the L, and you could ride it back and forth, you know what I mean? Just continuously all night long. And, I would go downtown, I would panhandle, and I would do things for alcohol that I would not do today. And that's just a fact. And at 15, I ended up my first rehab. I was mad. I was angry. I thought, you gave this to me. I went in there, and there were 27 adolescents in a locked ward. And we had all different isms. It was not pretty. It was not pretty. And, I ended up getting kicked out of there twice. I got kicked out the first time because my roommate wanted to hang herself, and I figured if she was going to take the easy way out, then so be it. And they kicked me out, and they let me come back a week later, but I had to go into the psychiatric unit downstairs, which was also a locked ward, and you had to suck the wall to light your cigarette. You know what I mean? And the lady I was in a room with burnt 90% of her body because she lit herself on fire, and I had to sleep with the lights on. And I was 15, and I was scared to death. And I conned my grandmama into letting me come home, and I came home, and I went to meetings for a while, and then I started walking my dog down to the corner, figuring out where the keg was. I tied the dog up on the cyclone fence. I'd go drink for a little bit, rush home. I was going to meetings. I sat in the back of the room. I watched the clock. I watched the guys. I didn't listen to anything anybody said because I felt like I couldn't relate. I was 15 years old. It was in the 80s, in the mid-80s. And I fooled around, and, I was in 9th grade 3 times. I remember, and I used to be ashamed to say that. My first year in 9th grade, I went, but I didn't do anything. The second year in 9th grade, I just didn't go. The third year in 9th grade, I was now put in an alternative school with kids for behavior problems. So, not being smart, anybody could have passed that. My day consisted of material handlings and, playing tic-tac-toe. You know what I mean? It was all that. So, and between my last year in 9th grade and my sophomore year, I went to live with my mom, my biological mom. She had gotten sober, gotten remarried, and my grandparents were moving down to southern Delaware because he retired, and I didn't want to go down there. There was nothing down there but cornfields and all that stuff. So, I went to live with my mom, moved back to, the city, and I remember going to school. My brother is 13 months younger than me. So now he's a grade ahead of me. and he's really smart. Like, he's in some college-bound program in school or something like that. And he went to high school and college at the same time. And we were walking up the steps to the school the first day, and he goes, "Don't you dare tell anybody you're my sister." And to this day, I'll never forget the look in his eye when he did that. Excuse me. He meant that with everything in him. And I did it. And I went to that school sometimes. Sometimes I didn't. You know, I started drinking again. Now I'm 17 years old. And I hook up with some kids from rehab, and I go down there. And they put up with me for 2 weeks, you know, because I was fooling around with one of the girls' boyfriends or something like that, and they found out it was some big deal. And but that's how I operated, though. Like, I had no conscience. Once I picked a drink up, nothing else mattered. It didn't matter. I had no morals. I had no values, you know, anything to get another drink. And I needed somewhere to live. So, you know, and they ended up kicking me out after 2 weeks. And I called my grandparents, and they came and picked me up. And they took me down to Sussex County, Delaware. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's cornfields. They call it lower, slower Delaware. And you couldn't walk to the store. There was no bar on the corner. You had to have a car. So they said, "You can live here as long as you get a job and you go to AA." And I said, fine. I got a job at the local supermarket, you know, and I started going to AA. And the closest meeting was 25 minutes away. And every night, everybody went to, like, a different meeting in a different town, but sometimes it would take you 40 minutes or 45 minutes to drive, like, 3 towns down. Do you know what I mean? The highway. So, you know, there was a detox not that far, and I used to go there because all the guys from the halfway house went there. And I watched the clock, I watched the guys, and I did none of the work. I asked a woman to be my sponsor because she was the one that all the women asked to be, or, you know, their sponsor. So she was like the it lady. And I never cracked a big book with this woman. I never sat down with her and shared on a one-on-one basis or anything like that. And, you know, I turned 18, and a year after I turned 18, almost to the day, I married the guy that I found in the room. You know, he was 9 years my senior, and my whole family was flipping out. You know, and I was like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I've been everywhere. I've been to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And they're the 3 states I've ever been in. So, you know, I had this wedding and everything like that. And again, I never call myself sober during that time. I stayed dry for 3 years. I was an alcoholic with untreated alcoholism. And I turned 21, and I was working in a local restaurant, and they were, you know, all the kids from D.C. came in, you know, with their Beamers and all that stuff, and I was resentful, like a lot. And I'm like, here I am, 21, and married. I've never had a legal drink in my life, you know what I mean? And, like, they're all going out partying. Like, the money they make at the restaurant isn't paying their mortgage and paying their bills. Like, it's their fun money. So I went out with them one night, and lo and behold, I peed my pants, I threw up, and I blacked out. 3 years later, nothing changes. And then I came home with my towel between my legs, and he said, the next time you drink, you have to get out. So 2 weeks later, my girlfriend came over. He was at work. You know, we put the black dresses on, the little black dress and the black high heels, and we went down to a local club down at the beach, and I hooked up with somebody that was not my husband. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was trying to get my car out of the driveway without him hearing me. I was, like, plastered. And you know when you're trying to be quiet when you're totally drunk? And I got in my car, and it was a stick shift. And I got in my car, and he came running out the door. I just backed up, blew the mailbox over, and took off down the road. Because, again, they're country roads. And I don't know how many mailboxes I took out between my house and my grandfather's house. You know, and I got there, and I remember getting in the door and shutting the door and going, he can't touch me now. Not that he would touch me, but just I didn't have to deal with all that. And I immediately went back to detox. I went back to rehab, and I did what any good alcoholic does. I met somebody in rehab. And I was in some town in Maryland, like way down on the water. If you had put me out on the road and spun me around, I would not know how to get home. But I met some guy in rehab that was from up where I was from, like, Philly. I was like, that's God, right? So of course, we hooked up in rehab, and he went home before me. So, of course, my husband comes in, we meet with the counselor. They're like, how can we reconcile this? I'm like, I don't want to reconcile, I want a divorce. She's like, what? Because that's what I do, I run. So, my mom and my stepfather came down, and they said, because I wanted to go back to Philly, that was the only place I had to go, and they said I could live there, but they had this list of rules. They literally wrote it out on a piece of paper. I'm like, I'm 21 years old. If I'm paying you rent, I don't have to do what you tell me to do. They're like, if you want to live in our house, you'll do what we tell you to do, and you'll follow the rules. So I did everything I could. I lived there for 2 weeks. Until I could con enough money, take enough money or whatever to get out of there. And I lived 2 blocks away. I moved 2 blocks away, but it was my apartment. And my sister was supposed to be my roommate. But, from the time that I got out of rehab, went to my parents, of course, this guy's still in the picture, and he had a different addiction. She's like, I'm out here. She's like, I can't do this. I just can't do this. And so I was like, fine. That relationship ended up in a restraining order coming out. He beat me up. There was blood all over. I had to go to the emergency room. I had to go to the roundhouse downtown and get a restraining order on him. It was ugly. And I remember I had no friends at this point either. I didn't have any high school friends. I drank them away. You know what I mean? I didn't have any friends from kindergarten, to have her in my maid of honor in my wedding. I didn't have all of that. We moved so much as a kid, you know what I mean, through my mom's alcoholism. I didn't have that. And, I started hanging around with my sister's friends, you know what I mean, and I would go to, the parties with them. And I was of age and they were not. And it was perfectly okay with me, for them, you know what I mean, for me to buy their booze if they were my friends, And I ended up meeting this guy. I didn't like him. I met him at a dealer's house. I met him. I did not like him. And I found out in the next week that he liked me, and he owned a bar. I've done a lot of things for a drink, you know what I mean? But that was perfect. I could stay drunk enough. And that's what I did. I hooked up with this guy. I was pregnant within a month. And I was living with him. I had no job. And, I look back on that now and how chaotic it was. And I was trying to recall a couple things today when I was thinking about speaking, and there are some years in my life that I remember, but I don't remember. You know what I mean? It was such a fog. And I remember hooking up with him, and I was working in a men's bar. I don't know what you guys call them out here. I was not on a pole. I was the waitress. And so I felt a little better then. And I worked there until I started showing. I quit that job. And I remember going for my 5th month baby checkup. And they said, there's no heartbeat. And they took me, downstairs, and they said, your baby's dead. And I was devastated. And I had never stopped drinking, and I had never stopped doing what I did when I was pregnant for those 5 months, and was that God's way of me not bringing another child into the world that, I was going to neglect or whatever? I don't know. But my heart broke my heart broke. And I remember leaving that hospital, and I had to go have a procedure the next day, and I left the hospital. I remember getting out of, the boyfriend's car and walking straight in the bar. And I remember the first 5 minutes, but I don't remember anything after that. And I remember my mom picking me up the next day to take me to the hospital, and she's like, "You smell like your brewery." And I was like, who cares? It was at that point in my alcoholism I didn't care. I didn't care anymore. And the definition of insanity is what? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. My other definition of insanity is knowing and just not caring anymore. And, they told me to wait. I had another baby. I got pregnant again 3 months later. That was in June. I have no recollection of that entire summer whatsoever. I remember it being June 4th, and then I remember on Labor Day driving over a bridge coming back from the shore. That was my recollection. I did get pregnant again. I did not stop drinking. I was moderately drinking this time. I didn't feel like I could belly up to the bar pregnant, you know what I mean? Like my mom said she did that when she was pregnant with me, but you can't do that in the 90s. It's just not acceptable. You can't do it now either. So my solution was to go to the local 7-Elevens and the Rite Aids and buy bottles of Robitussin and NyQuil. And, it's fun. It's different out here. Like I can't walk into the 7-Eleven and buy, a bottle of wine. In Pennsylvania, you have state stores and you have beer distributors. It's just not like right there. And, people always talk about going to different state stores so people didn't know they were buying as much. I went to different Rite Aids and 7-Elevens because they kept that stuff locked up. And I didn't want to have to tell the clerk again. You know what I mean? Like I bought a bottle of NyQuil yesterday. I need another one today. And, but anyway, I had that baby. He turned 18 yesterday. When I shared about this the other day, I'm like, I didn't kill him. You know what I mean? And I mean that. Through neglect or just killing them. It was at that point that I drank at home. I was 25, between 25 and 26, I drank at home. I didn't go out clubbing anymore. I didn't do anything fun. My behavior was too unpredictable after I picked up the first drink. So, I remember the last day that I drank was probably the only time I ever took a drink. And I remember saying that alcohol prayer, "Dear God, please help me." I called a woman who I had talked to on the phone and went to a couple meetings with, and told her I was done. And she said, are you willing to go to any lengths to stay sober? And I said, yes. And we got working on the steps immediately. And I wrote my first step. She said, you need to write your first step. I go, that's not a writing step. There's no directions in the book that say you have to write your first step. I grew up in AA, you know what I mean, between the drinking and AA. So I had a lot of knowledge. Anyway, she said, it is for you. Because you forget. So I did. And her direction to me was to read a little bit out of the 12 and 12, write, read, write, do, you know what I mean, alternate. And I did that. And we sat down and we read it. And then, we sat and we read the second step. The third step, I had to read for 90 days, and if I missed a day, I had to start over again. And after that 90 days was out, we sat down and we did the third step prayer together out of the big book. And she moved across the state. And I had 6 months sober. And I was like, what do I do now? So I had to find another sponsor. So I find another sponsor. In that time, too, I gotten married to my spouse, who's also in the Rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, we set up house and everything like that, and everything was going well. Everything was going really good. And I got another sponsor. I wrote my 4-step. There was that one thing I wasn't ever going to tell anybody on that 4-step, and I was freaking out. And some guy came up to me after meeting, he's like, you can share that with your sponsor or whoever you're going to tell your 5th step to before that if it's really eating you up. And I did that, and she had done the same thing. She had done exactly the same thing. I was like, damn, there went my uniqueness. You know what I mean? And in my sobriety, I found out that I am not unique and I've done nothing different than anybody else has done. My circumstances might be different, but, there's nothing unique about me. Anyway, after I did that with her, she stopped going to meetings. I got another sponsor, my third sponsor. She said, "What step are you on?" I said, 6. And she said, "Okay, be at my house this date, this time we're going to read the 6th step." I said, "Fine." So I went there, we read the step. She said, "I want you to go home and think about, I want you to make a list." Because I did my 4th step out of the 12 and 12, so I didn't have the columns when I had done my 5th step. She said, "I want you to go home, I want you to read the 6th step out of the 12 and 12 and the big book, and I want you to write down, your character defects and your shortcomings." I said, "Fine." I left her house and I thought, I don't have any. I don't have any shortcomings or defects. And I really believe that. I'm like, my character defects and shortcomings, they protect me. I honed them for a really long time. It's the same thing. Like, I had to drink every drink that I took because it kept that pain away. You know what I mean? How was I going to give up my character defects and my shortcomings and I quit drinking? Like, really? When I was 5 years sober, I had my daughter that had just walked in. And, or was I 6 years sober? I forget. It was in 2000. Right after she was born, I got a job. I left the corporate America and I went to work for a smaller company. And it wasn't long after I started working there that I started stealing from them. And it was at that time that I was an alcoholic with untreated alcoholism. I was dishonest. I really have to watch myself in Alcoholics Anonymous. I know they talk about getting involved in service, but I have to be careful for me because what I did was I put AA meetings on the back burner. I was stealing from the company that I worked for, so I got involved in all the service that I could so that you couldn't see me. No one knew about what I was really doing. And I don't know if that makes any sense. And I did that for 5 years. And I left that job for different circumstances. And after a month of leaving there, I was at a new job in my office with the door shut. First, I had contemplated suicide, but my husband had been through a family member doing that before, and I couldn't put him through it again. Or I was looking for countries that would let me extradite me, let me go to their country, and they wouldn't extradite me back to the United States. And I remember my door being shut, and I called my sponsor, and she was with another sponsee at the vet, and I said, "I'm going to effing kill myself." She said, "What's going on?" And I told her, and she goes, "Pack up your stuff at work and leave." And I did. I left. And we hooked up, and we went to a meeting that night, and I could not stop crying. I was looking at some serious, serious trouble. It wasn't a couple $1,000s. It had gone on for 5 years, and it was really bad. So 2 nights later, my husband went to an AA meeting, and I packed my bags, and when he got home from the meeting, I was fully dressed, because I totally expected him to tell me to leave when I told him what I had done, and he didn't. And that year was horrible, and I was looking at serious time. I was arrested sober. My picture was on the front page of the newspaper. It was really, really bad. And, I remember going through that and sharing, at my home group. And one of the guys that was he was the best man at my wedding. He was also John's sponsor back home. And he would say to me, "Colleen, anybody can eat an elephant one bite at a time." And I was like, "You can take that stupid saying that you just said to me and shove it." You do not know how much that saying saved my butt for the next 3 years. And I still think about it. I'm like, as dumb as that sounds, it's one day at a time. Anybody can eat an elephant one bite at a time. And, I went through that year with a lot of uncertainty, and I put my kids, my family through hell. I went to sentencing, and I'm going to back up a little bit. The beginning of that year when all that happened, my sponsor came to me and she said, "Are you ready to work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, honestly now?" And I said, "I'm willing to do anything." And that entire year, it was about a bunch of women and men, but women in the fellowship that surrounded me and kept me on the phone because nobody knew if I was going to drive off the side of the road on the way home from work or if I was going to drink. I went to my sponsors one night. I was freaking out, and she said she was coming home from work. She'd meet me there. When I got there, she wasn't there, and her husband, who was in the program, was there, and he physically stopped me from drinking. He held my arm as we sat on the log and physically stopped me from drinking. And, at the end of that year, I was able to make restitution. I got 750 hours of community service, and I had an electronic bracelet on my ankle for 2 years. And the only thing I could do was go to work. And you do not know how grateful I was for that. And I worked the 12 steps in that year with my sponsor. And my spiritual awakening was the day of sentencing when I could turn around to the people that I did that to and completely say how sorry I was and completely mean it and be totally grateful for what I got. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but Alcoholics Anonymous has saved my life. And, I remember shortly after that, I was allowed to go to Mass with my bracelet on. And I kind of threw myself into my faith, you know what I mean, for the next couple of years. And I remember going to Mass, and John's dad, who I really respected, he would meet me there sometimes. I would go do my community service, and I'd go right to Mass. And he was there that night, and we were outside, and I needed to do my 9th step with him. You know what I mean? And I took him out front of that church, and I said, "I'm really sorry for putting your name through the mud. And I'm really sorry for doing this stuff that I've done to your son and your grandchildren." And he turned around to me, he said, "You're the best wife and the best mother to my son and my grandchildren." He said, "You don't think we all have skeletons in our closet and we all haven't done something that we're ashamed of?" He goes, "Yours was a little large." He said, but I've learned, Colleen, through the years that you don't do anything little. And he died 2 weeks later. He dropped dead. And through the whole thing, my family doesn't talk to me. You know what I mean? I have a contact with one of my sisters, but I don't talk to my mom or my stepfather. You know what I mean? My grandfather has Alzheimer's, and he lives with them, and it's just a mess. But, that whole experience brought me closer to my higher power. It made me see. I felt like he smacked me upside the head. You know what I mean? Because it brought me to my knees, to me. Like, I gave up alcohol, but I didn't give up the ism. I didn't stop. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know if I'm making any sense. Self-will run riot. And, it's funny because my sponsor said to me, way when she first started sponsoring me, she said, "I will share my experience, strength, and hope with you, but if there's something that I haven't been through, I'll do everything I can to find somebody that's been through that, and I'll be damned if she didn't find someone that went through the same exact thing that I did in sobriety." And he was able to walk me through that. And I would call him every day and be like, "You don't understand, I'm going to kill myself." And he'd be like, "Colleen, you have to reach way down deep inside and pull it out of somewhere." He's like, "'Cause you stopped drinking." And he goes, "You can do this." And he goes, "If you have to go to jail, you can do this sober." And I just tell him to go F himself, and, 'cause that's how I am. And he's like, "I went to jail sober." I'm like, "Well, you're just all that, aren't you? I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can take my kids coming to see me." And that was another thing. My son, who turned 18, was so mad at me. He heard it in school from the kids, because kids are kids. And, he had a really tough time in school, and I had to make amends to him. But, it brought me that whole experience, as much as it sucked, I have a faith that I never had before. Because I had to. I had no choice. I was going to consume myself and kill myself, or I was going to hit my knees and beg my higher power to help me in every regard. I was the one that gave all of it, but I'll keep this little piece for me. You know what I mean? I could keep this one little piece for me, and it doesn't work. And I am grateful that I didn't pick up a drink. You know what I mean? Do I wish it didn't happen? Yeah. I think about stuff that I did, and I'm like, he could have just put a billboard up to tell me what he needed to tell me instead of smacking me in the head. But some are sicker than others. And I realized that I'd done a lot of work in Alcoholics Anonymous, to make sure that incident doesn't define me. It doesn't define me. I made a mistake, but it doesn't define me. And, I have used that experience to help others in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. We moved out here last July. It was really scary. It was like, people were like, who do you know in San Diego? I'm like, nobody. We just have friends in AA we haven't met yet. And we got here on a Friday, and I was in a meeting on Saturday. You know what I mean? John was in a meeting on Sunday. And we got plugged into Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's what I know. All my friends back home were in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I don't have those kindergarten friends or those middle school girlfriends and all that stuff that I grew up with. I burned those bridges. God has blessed me with so many things. And I have to remember on a daily basis that I have to give it away to keep it. And I'm not really good at that. You know what I mean? I have to tell you the truth. I struggle with that sometimes. I still feel less than. I still feel worthless. I still feel like I don't have anything to give. Or what I have to give isn't real good. I always feel like I'm the poster child of what not to do when you get sober. Again, we moved out here and I got plugged into Alcoholics Anonymous right away. And it is still scary because I have to go to meetings and feel like a newcomer. You know what I mean? I have to raise my hand and say, I'm Colleen and I just moved here and I need friends. You know what I mean? Or I just need to get connected. And it's hard because I know that the 12th step says, you know what I mean, put your hand out to the next suffering alcoholic. I'm not suffering and I'm not brand new, but I could use a friend. You know what I mean? And that's not easy. And about everything I learned in AA, it goes against my grain. It really goes against my grain. Honesty, open-mindedness, don't steal. Like, it all goes against my grain. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's a simple program, but it's not easy. It's hard. It's damn hard. Not picking up a drink one day at a time. I'm an alcoholic. I'm not a tuna fish holic or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? We had a friend back home who used to say, what was the story? If I left here tonight, he said it real calm too. If I left here tonight and went and had a tuna fish sandwich and I threw up and blacked out and peed myself, I would never eat another tuna fish sandwich. Never. But if I left here tonight and went, you know what I mean, and drank, they don't sell quarts anymore, do they? Or are they 40s or something like that now? You know what I mean? If I left here and I went and drank a 40, I'm an alcoholic. You know what I mean? The obsession will return, and I will not stop drinking until I physically can't pick up another drink. It doesn't matter how long it will take. Alcohol took me to many places. I ended up with a lot of people that I didn't want to be with, doing a lot of things that I didn't want to do. I don't want to have to go out and read the street signs to figure out where I'm at when I come to anymore. You know what I mean? I want to go to bed tonight and put my head on my pillow and thank my higher power for everything he's given me, everything he's taken away, and everything he's left me with. and I want to have gratitude, and I want to be in action. Okay. I want to be the perfect alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic in AA. Ain't never going to happen. And I know that. But I can strive for that. And again, I've been blessed. You know what I mean? I have a sponsor who gives me good, orderly direction, out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was freaking out. I had to share this. She's going to kill me. The ladies next door to me where we live hooked me up with a lady who we ended up working together for a couple of days. And I go out, and some people at the Monday night meeting know this too. I go out to the car one day to get the toolbox, and I have her keys in my hand. And I unlocked the car, and I was like, what? Really? Nuh-uh. So I run in the house. I was all excited. I was like, are these your keys? She goes, yeah, I'm in recovery. I'm like, 29 years, though? I was like, holy crap. It was just a coincidence. But was it really? You know what I mean? I've had wonderful people and women put in my life. You know what I mean? I can't get away with shit. Never. You know what I mean? It just, and I have women in my life that I emulate, that I want to be like. I want to be a lady. I did not want to wear this skirt tonight. I fought and balked. Yeah. That was what drove me crazy today. I'm like, I'm wearing pants. What's the group conscience? I called my sponsor. You know what I mean? I did all this stuff, and I was like, and that might sound dumb, but I'm like, I didn't want to do it. Don't tell me what to do. I'm still an alcoholic. You know what I mean? I don't know. I try and be honest today. Sometimes I still feel like a newcomer. Sometimes I feel like I should be way further along than I should be. But again, like I said, I have done the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I put my head on my pillow at night, and I don't have to look over my shoulder today for anything or any reason. And, I try to be of service in whatever way that I can be. Whatever way that I can be. Just to be a good person. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.